Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Person of interest being sought in gruesome murder of Clarendon family. Parliamentarians condemn act of brutality against 4 children and their mother. And later in sports, under-20 reggae boys suffer heavy defeat at CONCACAF Championships. Alicia Williams, and here are the details. Year-old baby is among 4 children and their mother who were brutally murdered in Clarendon this morning. Now their bodies were found in the community of New Hope near Chapelton with multiple stab wounds and their throats slashed. An early morning massacre sending shockwaves through the community of New Road in Clarendon Tuesday morning, attracting dozens of people and police and military personnel. Just meters away from the yellow tapes is the house where the bodies of 4 children and their mother were found with their throats slashed. The police say the bodies also had stab wounds. It's not clear what time the tragedy took place. As for the victims, the children have been identified as 15-year-old Kimani Smith, 10-year-old Shemina Smith, 5-year-old Kafana Smith, and the youngest, Tishona Henry, was just 23 months old. Head of the Clarendon Police, Senior Superintendent Glenford Miller, is irate.
They could be any one of our family members, any one of our children. 1-year-old baby. Come on, man.
It's believed that the incident stems from a domestic dispute. SSP Miller says residents now have to play their part and help the police.
When we are killing off our female and our children like this, this is something that we want the community of Cocopees to help us solve this case quick and fast. So I am using this moment now to tell you this, that anybody will hear anything, say anything, know anything, you don't need to come forth and let me know. This is something we must not condone.
And we're now joined by our reporter Kirk Wright, who's on location in Clarendon. Kirk, talk to us about the atmosphere, what the atmosphere is like in the community right now.
Thank you very much, Felicia. Very, very somber here in a community called Coco Peace. The police are now taking the painstaking effort to remove the 5 bodies from what seemed to be a relatively small 2-bedroom house. And the residents here are just gathered, looking. Not much is being said about the incident. I have managed, though, to get a few information since I've been here. And what we understand is that there is some level of threat being issued against the mother. It appears if it's domestic. It's a domestic dispute. And so the police, we understand, are looking for a relative. What we also learn is that inside the house is ransacked. Things are all over the place. It seems as if we're not sure the person was looking for something, or if it is that persons were trying to get away. We understand that one of the daughters was seen in the position to suggest that she was trying to defend herself from the attacker or attackers. But at the moment, lots of people are standing just everywhere to see if they can get a view of the gruesome scene here in Cocopees. Felicia?
Thank you so much, Kirk Wright, our reporter in Clarendon, on the scene of the brutal murder of 5 people. And the police have identified a 23-year-old man as a person of interest in the murders. Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson gave the update at the crime scene this morning.
Who we think may be involved, but there's someone who may be able to help us with the investigation. One Rushane Barnett, OC Jet. He's also of Wilson Run Trelawney or Papine in St. Andrew. He's 23 years old and is a cousin of the deceased.
Meanwhile, government and opposition members are this afternoon decrying the gruesome act. More in this report.
An act of barbarity. That's how National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang has labeled the killing of 4 children and their mother in Clarendon last night. He was speaking at the Joint Select Committee of Parliament looking at the Firearms Act this morning.
It's hard to comprehend and appreciate. I think the entire country feels the horror of this and extend the, I think I speak on behalf of every parliamentarian and technical officer in this room today, to extend our deep sympathy and to the family and to the community members. I also was comment that this is the kind of brutality that police face every day, from shootings to domestic violence, which makes the challenges far greater.
The opposition spokesman on national security, Senator Peter Bunting, has also condemned the act.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me on behalf of the opposition to join in condemnation of that horrific act of violence and to associate the opposition with the remarks that you've made and to urge the community and the society, anyone who has any information, to assist the police in bringing the perpetrators to justice.
Meanwhile, Legal and Constitutional Affairs Minister Marlene Malahoo Fort says these are not normal times, especially on the crime front. She's calling for strong action to be brought against the perpetrator when caught and brought before the courts.
And I truly look forward to the time when the righteous outrage that we experience will be directed at the criminal elements who really fear no one and who believe they can act with impunity. And it is my hope that whomever is responsible in this case will find no hiding place, and when brought to books, will meet the just consequences of his or her action.
Cody Ann Barrett, TVJ News.
And we're now joined via phone by children's advocate Diane Gordon-Harrison. Mrs. Gordon-Harrison, thanks for joining us. Yet again, an attack on the nation's children. 4 of them killed in a gruesome manner between last night and this morning. Your initial reaction?
One of feeling numb, a great sadness, of course, because just the level of the barbarity associated with this very violent crime is one that cuts you to your core, and quite upset that, we continue to see the bloodletting of children who sometimes, many times, have nothing to do with the adult issues that would have caused the matter to get to this level, really just senselessly lose their lives. And at the same time, expressing my very deep and heartfelt condolences to the family, the members of the community, and, all persons who would have known these 4 children and their 34-year-old mother.
Mrs. Gordon-Harrison, do you believe we need legislative changes to serve as a deterrent to these vicious attacks on our children?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I was asking, do you believe we need legislative changes to serve as a deterrent to these vicious attacks on our children?
I'm not hearing you well.
Are you still there? Are you hearing me now, Mrs. Gordon-Harrison?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, so my question is, do you believe we need legislative changes to serve as a deterrent to these vicious attacks on our children?
No, every time we have this conversation and we talk about legislation, which is perhaps a very natural response, the legislation is there. We do have the legislative framework. What we need now is for the evidence to come forward within the confines of the existing legislation, because, this is murder. We have very serious pieces of legislation on the books. For example, we don't use the term capital murder anymore, but certainly wherever you have a murder that has occurred and there are 4 deaths in that one incident, it is open to the prosecution at trial to ask for the very extreme penalty of death. So we do have the legislative provision, but before we even get there, we need to have persons who are witnesses, persons who have information that could assist, come forward so that first we can build a solid case against the would-be perpetrator. I'm very encouraged, though, that having heard the Commissioner of Police, at least one person of interest has been identified so far. So that's encouraging that people are perhaps so outraged by the violent act that they're already speaking. And I want to encourage them to keep doing it, because informers are valuable people to ensuring that accountability takes place. And so that's where we need to start, so that we can really have solid cases and the possibility of having the full force of the law move against these perpetrators once convicted.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Gordon Harrison. That's children's advocate Diane Gordon Harrison. And it's now time for a big break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. More Jamaican officials are arriving in Kigali, Rwanda for high-level talks at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Janella Precious is covering the event and now reports.
Thank you so much. Well, Prime Minister Andrew Holness as well as Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett are expected to arrive in Rwanda tomorrow. Now, we've already seen the arrival of Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith. Now, we are currently at the Inare Arena. Senator Johnson-Smith made a brief appearance here where two Jamaicans were installed to the new executive of the Commonwealth Youth Council. They are Everton Rattray, who is now the Vice Chair of Inclusion and Engagement, and Najee Nunez, Vice Chair of Policy and Advocacy. This installation marks the conclusion of the Youth Forum. Now, following 3 days of talks, the young people of the Commonwealth are demanding to be part of the conversation and the decision-making by the heads of government. Benjamin Fraser, a Jamaican, is the Caribbean and Americas regional representative in the Commonwealth Students Association. A major concern is education in the post-COVID pandemic era.
Through a partnership with the Global Students Forum and 100 Million campaign, we have been saying to governments all over the world, we need you to invest in education substantially, and particularly in post-COVID, because of the number of students who have been left behind. And without the appropriate investment, they'll continue to be left behind.
Do you think that advocacy is working?
I think that the wheel is slow. The wheel is turning slowly. And with youth, there is that view that you ought to be seen and not heard. But that is also changing, and I think in a dramatic way. And so I think that our voice is being heard. It's coming out in policy, it's coming out in legislation, and it's coming out in actions. And I believe it will come out in the actions that the ministers at Chogum will decide on.
Reporting from the Inare Arena in Kigali, I'm Janella Precious for TVJ News.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Here's Cody and Barrett.
News in the economy. International Monetary Fund, IMF, Caribbean member countries are being encouraged to lead take-up of the institution's multi-billion-dollar Resilience and Sustainability Trust, RST. IMF's Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, made the appeal while speaking at an IMF high-level panel discussion on building resilience and sustainability in the Caribbean in Bridgetown, Barbados last week.
This is an instrument, first time in the history of the IMF, that provides long-term financing, long-term maturity for structural transformation to build resilience. And it is an instrument that, for the first time in the history of the IMF, recognizes vulnerability as a criterion for concessional financing.
And in business internationally, U.S. President Joe Biden says a decision on whether to pause a federal gasoline tax could come by the end of this week. This is among various options being considered by the Biden administration as the United States struggles to tackle soaring gasoline prices and inflation, which is now at its highest in 40 years. With the Business Minute, I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
And it's time now for the top regional and international stories with Sandy Williams.
In the region, in Guyana, the bodies of two men were recovered from the Pomeroon River on Monday. 29-year-old Devroy Norton and 18-year-old Sherwin Adolphus drowned in the river after their single-engined powered boat collided with a fishing vessel Sunday night. According to the police, the two men, who are cousins, were reportedly consuming alcohol beverages on Sunday evening at a resort near the river. Media reports say the cousins were heading home to Acne along the Pomeroon River to celebrate Father's Day when the accident occurred. The police say their probe into the circumstances that led to the men's death will continue. On the international scene, a deputy police director in China has been removed from office following an investigation into a brutal attack on a group of women in a restaurant. The attack in Tangshan City saw a group of men beating 4 female diners. The incident, captured in a shocking viral video, sparked an intense debate about gender violence in China. A report released on Tuesday found the handling of the case by the Deputy Director of District Police and other officers had been slow and improper. The Provincial Public Security Department report did not make clear whether the Deputy Director had been sacked or suspended. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your Midday Sports Report. Jermaine Brown is standing by.
Welcome back. It's now time for your lunchtime sports, and we head to Honduras, where Jamaica's under-20 reggae boys suffered a heavy 5-0 defeat to host Honduras in their second match in Group H at the CONCACAF Championship on Monday evening in San Pedro Sula. Marco Aceituno opened the scoring for the Hondurans as early as the 3rd minute. And with the Jamaican defense yet to find their footing, he returned in the 35th to add another to make it 2-0. And things would get worse for the young Jamaicans when defender Lamont Rochester was red-carded in first half added time. The Hondurans picked up where they left off upon the resumption when Isaac Castillo made it 3-0 after more sloppy defending from the young Jamaicans. Minute 58, and it was time for the substitute, Jervin Macias. His shirt still not yet mudded to get in on the act as he made it 4-0. And he got his second and the Hondurans fifth with this neat piece of footwork in the 85th minute. The Jamaicans had their chances on goal, but it was not to be their night as the Hondurans who recorded their second straight win. The Jamaicans, who had played to a 1-1 draw with Costa Rica in their opening match, are lying 3rd in the group and will next play Antigua and Barbuda in their final preliminary round match on Wednesday. The Antiguans lost 3-0 to Costa Rica in the group's other match on Monday to suffer their second defeat of the tournament. The young Jamaicans can still advance if they avoid defeat against the Antiguans. And locally, Harbour View and Arnett Gardens played out a 1-1 draw in their first leg quarterfinal match in the Jamaica Premier League at Sabina Park on Monday evening. Trevon Reeds, he opened the scoring for Harbour View from the penalty spot in the 45th minute. Before that was cancelled out by Arnett through Michael Allen in the 79th. And in the second game of the doubleheader at the venue, title holders Cavalier and Mount Pleasant Academy played to a 0-0 draw in their first leg quarterfinal match. The return leg matches are set for Thursday. Netball news now. Michael A are the champions of the Netball Jamaica Supreme Ventures Major League after a 49-43 win over Tivoli in the final at the Lee Robinson courts at the weekend. It was a come-from-behind effort from Michael, who trailed 24-21 at the half, and they edged ahead 33-32 in the third quarter and pulled away to open up a 6-goal gap in the final period for the victory. Ravens finished third after a 36-34 win over GC Foster in their playoff match.
Staying consistent and being focused. Even though we started off on a rough path, we were able to be focused and to regain what our game plan.
We made changes and it worked. Annette and I, we put our heads together as usual, and to ensure that whenever we make change, there's a positive, and there was heaps of positive.
And Alpha B were also positive. They won the minor league title after their 27-17 victory over Excelsior Eagles in the curtain raiser. while Marshallette finished third in the minor league with a 21-16 win over Spec B. Goal defense Cornelia Walters was named the minor league final MVP.
That, nonetheless, they haven't trained in a week, so they put their best foot forward. I think the third and the fourth quarter gave them this win.
At first, I think our players were a bit nervous, so I think that is what threw us off our game, but nonetheless, we came back very strong and we're really grateful.
And that's time. That's where we leave the courts for now, and I am Jermaine Brown.
News, I'm Kalisha Williams. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.